Hello and welcome to 365 Days Towards Racial Change. My name is Tomlins Nyback. Welcome to day 43 of my personal 365-day challenge towards racial change. We're exercising black issues, white issues in America, looking at things, doing our best to keep it from an economic perspective, keep our emotions and our ethics, feelings out of it, and follow the dollar. And it helps make historical sense to some of the issues facing Black Americans, white Americans in their privilege and entitlement, and Black Americans, whether or not there's been mental damages, whether there's prevailing issues around vulnerability in America. Do these things get passed down generationally? Same for white people and other races, groups in America in competition with blackness. And also, as it is steering the conversation towards economic issues, economic motivations, following the dollar, also encouraging Black Americans to play this economic game properly. Pay attention. Be careful of being entertained all the time with your smartphones and all the things we have, all the trappings. Even here in my small space, I've got a computer, cable, books, a lot of things to keep me engaged. But I must stay vigilant because our enemy prowls like a roaring lion. And I'm not just talking white folks, I'm talking even ourselves, our own attitudes, behaviors, personalities in our Black community. Today, this is day 43. Let's start with our standard introductions. We're informed, motivated, at least I am, by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. We do not know each other personally, but I love his work, and we reference heavily his work, videos, things I've heard him say, things I've read. And first book I read, which may have been his last, I don't know if he's still writing. I know he's still touring, talking about the message. Very articulate. A Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. Please get these books as well. I occasionally list them in the brief notes, but they're easy to find. I'm showing you the picture. You can easily Google it. Black Labor, White Wealth, A Search for Power and Economic Justice, and his national plan to empower Black America, Powernomics. And you see the nomics suffix here, I'm seeing it more creep up in other discourses, that language has that way of shifting, and like Google it's a noun and a verb, so nomics, the suffix nomics really is starting to take hold. We got the powernomics. I saw something other last night on CNN, nomics, economics, nomics. Okay, it's interesting. We're going to have story time occasionally as well. Look at Uncle Tom's Cavern every week or so. We'll take a chapter out of that, check in on old Uncle Tom, and see how he's doing, and relate these mid-1800 issues to modern-day America. I think we can see a lot of parallels that still exist. Legally, slavery's off the books, but has the dynamic really changed? Has America come away from that those issues by any large degree? So those are the things we look at in Miss Stowe's phenomenal work there. See behind me, hashtag us too. I finally checked in. I'm not a big online guy, believe it or not, But I finally checked in this conversation. I'm going to keep this up here because this is valid. It's a kind of a spin-off of the Me Too movement, but now that I've checked in on it after 40 some days of promoting it, it's not purely black issues. It's black women are um, kind of dominate the conversation in this issue. Sexual assault survivors, interpersonal violence survivors, stalking, sexual assault, uh, and domestic violence survivors. They're not primarily, it's just a community gathered. And I just looked online and got caught up, and it's more female discoursing there, but it's not explicitly, exclusively black females on there. So, but I'm going to keep this up though. Hashtag USTLO. Go ahead, Google it. They got Twitter videos and all that stuff. Good stuff. Also, you can check out Black Enough .mn. I finally checked in on that. BLAGGENUF.mn, and there's some more alphabet soup behind it. But as soon as you start typing it, I'm sure it'll come up. There's more of the black community of all sexes and sizes and shapes there to plug in and maybe get the latest. Today, for day 43, the title is Racism Revisited, and we need not get too far from the center of the argument. Racism, economics, roots in slavery, things like that. And, as we come out and look in the past and look in our present experience in the 21st century here, we can draw our conclusions. But you'll find these themes, don't get tired of them. Don't get tired of them, because we don't want to get complacent. We don't want to come up with a kind of racial science where we can move away from the source of our present experience as black people in America, and then perch ourselves complacency as far as we know and understand. And then what happens with me in my personal experience is I get lulled into sleep. I get lulled into apathy, complacency, comfortability. I'm not challenging. I'm not critically observing my environment. I'm not aware of how racism is involved in my daily life and dynamic. I start to get when the train and the bus is crowded, and I'm the last person that the white folks sit next to, or they'll even stand. I must look scary or something. I try to put on a good face, which I shouldn't have to. But, white folks on a crowded public transportation, I'm the last person they sit next to. All right. So, but I want to be sensitive to that. I want to always be alert, and that staying alert means I got to check in with the past. Listen, the white folks and privilege, entitlement, they looking at the past. They like, we won in the past. We subjugated, abused, enslaved, uh, marginalized. I like that. So let's keep that status quo. And to do that, we look at the past. I'm sure that whites and other races talk about over the dinner table. Now, black marginalization over the dinner table. Blacks are the only people. We're so forgiving and loving and trying to be so peaceful there in society, in American society. But we should have some real and genuine discourses about ourselves racially in the American landscape consistently. That never happened in my family, going as far back as roots when my mother and father were together. Roots was the only time blacks in my circle talked about anything, and then it was just a genealogy, not about being mistreated by white folks in America. So we'll go from there. But this is day 43. We're going to kick off this, the title's Racism Review. We want to do this a couple times a year. So we're going to revisit the subject, and it's very appropriate. Try not to nod off. This is very important. I'll try to have different facets as we move forward. I was watching. I'm going to start off watching Galye King and the embattled now governor. I forgot to catch the state. Ralph Northam. You can go ahead and Google that, find out the state and the things he's involved with. He was involved with putting on blackface in the past. He's allegedly appears in blackface with another gentleman in a Ku Klux Klan uniform. I think back in his college days and things like that. So he's going through some things like that. And Galye King was interviewing him, and he talked about knowing that he's privileged and knowing that he's got has racial breaks in America, and he affirmed something that I felt, something that I see almost in white Americans. This It's a look like, man, I feel so ashamed I got away with it, or that I was born on the white side, the right side. And I get that. It's just a feeling that I intuit when I'm out sometimes in public. Uh, Maybe it's when I make eye contact with a white person, some white people, and things like that. Or there's this humble demeanor that you know that they move about much more freely in American society than I do, and they know it. It's an awareness, hard to explain. But seeing him, in the interview, I saw that stoop. I saw and I heard that inflection in his voice. Oh, oops, I'm on the good side of this. Much like an attractive woman. It's like, boy, sometimes I see attractive women and they're like, boy, glad I got on that side of the beauty barrier and um, that side of the prejudice, and not on the unattractive side. Now, I didn't say what is attractive or unattractive, so don't try to jam me up. But some women are like, yeah, I'm glad I'm on that side of the line. And that was his attitude. Um, we're going to stop this issue of blackness, whiteness, racism, and all that stuff is going to cease when there's genuine inclusiveness for blacks in America. All through Dr. Anderson's book, he talks about economic injustices, like things. We got plenty of laws on the books, but you can't prove explicitly that someone's jamming you up on race unless you catch them on tape saying something racially derogatory and stuff like that. I've been called nigger out in public and stuff, but there's been no camera, so I can't prove it. So it's worthless to try to track down hate crimes in that sense. The young white gentleman that shot up the people after prayer service in church. He explicitly said, he's there to kill black people. Now that's hate crime. So you got witnesses and things like that. I don't have that, but it has happened to me on numerous occasions. So, but we want to see Forget about the words, attitudes of the heart and stuff. Give me unfettered access to the wealth, resources, privileges, rights of the nation. You don't go have a big congressional debate. I'm an American, right? I was born here. What is the, that's interesting, you got to go to have a debate on whether to have us vote, a debate to whether have equal opportunity in the workplace, legislation, bureaucracy. That's insane. Do I have the rights or don't I? If not, then put us back in chains, exercise slavery, and get down to it. You know, if I have the rights, then there's no debates. Let me come and go freely. Let me not be have extra scrutiny from law enforcement. To be prevented as these other groups that compete with me, Hispanics and Asians and other whites, be excluded. You know, I know I've been excluded from some of the jobs that I've applied for because I'm a black man, but there's no proving it. You don't have. We're maybe one day we'll get there. Have a little screen or something. You know, a raceonometer on our neck. To say, okay, if it flashes green, then the person is being totally objective and inclusive. Flashes red, you've got a racist on your hand. Something simple like that would be nice. That'd be a start. Then you'd get real, about some of these killings and profilings and things like that. So, the origins, Dr. Anderson states it beautifully. I love when he tells the story about the origins of racism. I'll give you some bullet points. We're talking back 1400s, late 1400s, 1500s. Look at European history, plagues, wars, dysfunction. Things just aren't working in Europe, Portugal, Spain, France, probably Italy, England, definitely, Germany. Those. Look at the United Kingdom nations, but those nations were hungry for some recovery. They were depressed. They were reaching out, so they already had some feelers out in the world. Not the Americas just yet, but Africa, India, things like that. So they already had feelers out in the world, but it was this interesting timing of finding this free black labor in Africa and this huge virgin lands inhabited by minorities, minimal people that weren't utilizing its resources there in the West on the other side of the ocean. So when this convergence of resources, wealth, labor became available, the European nations engaged in a race. There is where the origin of race connected to racism occurs in this collision of opportunity meeting labor, wealth, resources. It was just a perfect storm of this, and a great machine, economic machine, was created. There is your racism has begun. So in that, with the discovery, the utilization, exploitation of the labor and wealth of these Aboriginal people, the Africans and the Native Americans here on the American soil, racism, the race for these wealth and resources to capture them began. And it was just a perfect storm of opportunity for the European nations. So look, now slavery, if we can keep the context in a racial, keep it the idea of race in an economical conversation. It's not so much the right or wrong. Like there's moral abuses, the stripping off of a person's will, raping of women, tearing families apart. Those are all disappointing actions um, perpetrated by European, essentially white cultures. Um, but you follow the dollar, and it's an economic puzzle situation problem, and it just happens to be along color lines. It's easy to um, discern and place individuals on black and white terms because of the color. You can see the color. There's uh, no problem with that. But in other countries, trust me, in other countries there are lower class. There are those economically depressed, and everywhere around the globe, because it's a system. There's people at the top exploiting the people at the bottom. In America, it's along a very specific color line. It was just a no-brainer. It's easy to see they're not white. Blacks are black, so it was easy to keep us. We didn't have to wear a Jewish star, or even in the Bible, there's a space where there's a war, conflict that's going on, but because it's a civil war and among the Israelites, and they look alike, right? So one of their tests to figure out if this individual in this specific story is an enemy or is a friend or foe is they ask him to say a name or a phrase or a word or something, and um, his diction, his inflection, his accent gives him away. Otherwise, if he keeps his mouth shut, he's cool. You know, that type of thing isn't. Um, Blacks didn't have that privilege. You know, I expect if aliens from outer space came and you put us humans of all different colors in the room, they probably wouldn't discern any difference. They see bipedal people walking around on the earth, and they probably don't. Aliens wouldn't say, well, that there's a black and white and brown, yellows and reds, you know. But us humans discern that way. So as blacks are on a definite, specific side of the color line, when we were exploited in that. What makes American slavery so disgusting with me is they used us up for resources, kept us marginalized, depressed economically, and things like that. And they never relinquished that control. They stuck around and continued to suck out resources from black communities even after emancipation. And there were many emancipations. They just needed more and more emancipations because they never quite got it right. Even up to civil rights. Okay, now we need civil rights. So, but anyway, they keep sucking out the resources and things like that. And so where blacks never quite get into the into the realm of participating in an unfettered way with wealth and resources in this rich nation. You know, they we're kind of allowed to participate after the wealth and resources are consumed, and then we still come along and we're still laboring, and our disposable income, which I would say even more, because we're not generally landowners and things like that, gets spilled into uh, Chinese pockets, white pockets, Hispanic pockets. We're not business owners or landowners in general. So we wrestle with that. So if you put slavery in an economic light, remove the moral imperatives and right and wrong and things like that, follow the money, then it makes more sense. The black position, how we are just, if you remember the Matrix movies, when Lawrence Fishburne holds up a battery, he says, we're energizer like batteries for this big machine that's going on. And that's what blacks in America are reduced to. We live, go out, generate income, and we have to serve it up. We just serve it up. We get very little of it back into our community to get us together. And that's by design. That's a specific, deliberate architectural design to keep us um, marginalized and away from the fruits of our own labor. Okay. Finally, I just want to end with blackness, racism, things like that. We're talking about black people exclusively. No immigrant group has been enslaved for centuries in America. The black gays um, don't have, they have a history of being hidden, and they have their uh, martyrs and things like that. Every group has its place, but you need to notice that when blacks are all so inclusive and everything, then those groups that are coming along and piggybacking on black issues are just they ascend, they're validated, they excel, they participate openly in the economic landscape. But once you try to focus it on blacks, the message gets diluted, eyes glaze over, and people don't want to deal with it in America. They go into denial and apathy. Therefore, I'm suggesting, while those other groups have valid arguments, women, gays, um, those abused immigrants, yes, they come to America with a whole set of issues that keeps them marginalized. Then let them handle that. Us blacks don't need help. Us blacks must be exclusive in our argument, and very selfish about our message, our needs, our uh, our way of life here in America. Very different from all those other groups. The America that's a trick of America. Oh well, let's just include everybody. We're here for everybody. You can't. Not on black issues. Not on black issues. So be exclusively black. Now, finally, be aware of a black stereotype. Does black mean that you need a black man with a bass voice on a commercial, or is it entertainment, sports, game shows, um, you know, acting? things like that. Does it mean hip hop, rap, basketball, right? Like, be careful about blackness being whatever's not white. That we fall into a trap, a white trap of, appearing animalistic. You know, part of that trap is black men as rapists and black women as promiscuous. You know, we get into that because, well, whiteness presents itself as uh, a very clean, moral, and void of any type of perversions and things like that. So what is not white embraces that, so to speak. So be careful of how blackness is defined. Let's just start with the skin color. You know, I personally like rock and roll, heavy metal, and I've been immersed, indoctrinated into white culture, and that's how I move, live, and breathe. I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of that either. You know, the argument is the the, the impediments, the resistance, the marginalization that I receive because of my skin being black. That's that's it. That's the beginning. You know, it's not sports and rap music and hip hop and all these things that appear black, jazz music, you know, black creativity and things like that is not necessarily what defines being black. So be careful of that. We want to be exclusively black, but what does that mean? How is that defined? I want to just be able to come and go um, with just unfettered participation in the American landscape, whatever that means. So let's find a start there. That's racism revisited. I think that was the title. You get the idea in this short segment. We're over. So listen up. This is Tomlin's Nyback. Thanks for checking in. 365 days towards racial change. We will see you soon. Bye bye.